Hello, everyone. I'm Matthew Allen, and welcome back to another What a Thought. Welcome. Obviously, if you can't tell by the title, we're going to spend a majority of our time here talking about Scream 6, because I have some thoughts. I also just wanted to give like a light review. But before we get into that, I obviously wanted to acknowledge the passing of. I just hit my mic. The passing of Lance Reddick this past week really hits hard. I think for me personally, as someone who's African American, I kind of take note a little more when prominent African American like actors or like activists or just people of a high standing that are well known and are of the same skin tone pass away. It really just really throws itself at me. But we're gonna keep on keeping on. I know his family's gonna continue forward. He's brought forth such just a commanding presence, whether it was as Cedric Daniels over in The Wire, for gamers Zavala over in Destiny and Destiny 2, and more recently for me and my fellow nerds as Thordak the Cinder King over in The Legend of Vox Machina Season 2 over on Amazon. He will be missed. He was a force to be reckoned with in every project he was in. I watched that whole Resident Evil series on Netflix, and I thought it was hot garbage, but I thought every moment he was on screen was the best moments of the whole thing. So, may he rest in peace. I hope he cherished and enjoyed the 60 years of life that he got, and the many memories and tales that he leaves behind as an actor. So thank you, Lance Reddick. May you rest in peace. This past year, I feel like we've lost a lot of really big people. It's very weird to think about, but I can't let it bog me down too hard. Obviously, they're not people I knew personally. They're people I've gotten to admire. So yeah, if you guys have any kind words you want to leave for a man who won't get to read them, but that his memory will get to live on with the people that do see them, put them down in the comments down below. But now we're going to move on into the big chunk of today's podcast, and that is Scream 6. Now, if you don't know the Scream franchise, it's a long-running one at this point. Started in 1996 with the original Scream directed by Wes Craven, the man who gave us A Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy Krueger. It is a blend of horror and meta-comedy, so finely tuned that no amount of stabbing at it can really make it fall apart. Even in its weak moments, it's still really thriving. It's thriving hard. But it started in 1996. It has had, obviously, if they're up to Scream 6 now, it's had multiple sequels come out afterwards. 1, 2, 3, and 4 were all done by Wes Craven, with 1 being in 96, 2 in 97, 3 in 2000, 4 in 2011. Then, sadly, Wes Craven passed away not too long after that in, I believe, 2015. And in 2022, because it was last January, Scream 5 came out, directed by Radio Silence, the group that gave us, what is that movie called? Ready or Not, which I've heard is fantastic, and I just have not had the chance to see it. I really want to. I've heard so many great things about it, and they came back and finished up and put together Scream 6, which came out this past March. This past March? We're still in March. This past week. Not this last Friday, but the week before. So it's been out for about a week. Obviously, spoilers galore go out online. I had one of the major plot points spoiled to me online by some fool that doesn't understand that if you're going to post something on Twitter that is a spoiler, you need to do it in the reply tweet. The first tweet should just be the spoiler warning, and then anyone who goes searching in the replies can be spoiled, and that's their fault. Rather than it all being on the same tweet, that guy's an idiot. That pissed me off because it was literally the day before I went and saw the movie that I saw that. And I was like, I've been doing so well. I've been hiding from social media so hard. And I was like, it's ridiculous that the day before I go see it is when someone finally catches me off guard and I see a spoiler. But even with that spoiler, I went into this movie not knowing really what to expect. But I was like, it's Scream. I really enjoyed Scream 5. Scream 5 was a lot more, I don't want to say violent, but the violence that was enacted felt more real. Like, it made you, like, want to, like, curl up and away from the screen a lot more than in the previous 4 films. Which, nothing against the previous four films, there are definitely 100% still a lot of moments there where you want to curl away from what you're seeing. Just more so in 5, and definitely so in 6. It was a lot. But, this first portion, I don't want to really talk about, like, anything spoilerific. I just want to be like, just want to mention, I did enjoy the movie. I had a lot of fun. I saw it by myself, but that theater was basically packed, which I had issue with the theater itself because there was only one regular showing of the movie and one 3D showing, which was weird because I saw it the Monday after it came out. Like, it came out on the Friday. I was like, there's no way you've downgraded it to just one theater showing, like, twice a day. One 3D, one regular. I was like, that's so weird. I was like, that doesn't help people go see the movie or want to come to your theater, but whatever. But even with that weird timing, it was as close to being packed as it could in the town I was in, especially for it being the first Monday of spring break. The amount of people that were in there watching that movie was way more than I had expected, especially because when I saw Scream 5 in the same theater complex, like within the week that it came out, it was like bare bones empty in there. I was glad I saw it in theaters. I thought that made it like way cooler, and I saw that one unspoiled. So I was really caught by a lot of the things that occurred. But Scream 6, way more people in the theater, which meant like way cooler reactions to certain things. I enjoyed the movie. I feel like they could have way more used the location of New York now. I have already done some like preliminary research on my own, watched some interviews, and I know they didn't shoot in New York. They were in some part of Europe. I can't remember what part or what European nation, but they weren't in New York, and it really shows because of the lack of using like certain spots. Apparently, all of the B-roll footage was shot not in New York, and then I think the subway scene was shot in either New York or something they set up to look like New York, but everything else was shot not in America, and it really shows. This movie was sold really well on the idea of them using this like New York setting. And I really wanted that. I really wanted this New York setting because I was like, oh, it's going to be really good. And we really didn't get to explore it. We didn't get to look at Central Park. We didn't get to look at Times Square. All of these big, famous like landmarks to New York were just sort of left out. And I understand that budgetarily, it's insane to try and do anything in actual New York because getting the permits to shut stuff down, you wouldn't be able to really do reshoots if anything doesn't come out correct the first time round. Like, I understand the struggles that come with it, but I really felt like we needed more of it. We really needed more of this setting in this moment because Scream as a franchise has spent a lot of time all over the place. Woodsboro is based in California. It's not a real city, but that's where it's supposed to be. So we get Woodsboro in the first one. I don't remember where Windsor College is, but we get the college setting for the second one, which is Windsor. Real quick, where is that? It's a fake college, but it's supposed to be in Ohio. It's supposed to be in Stone Ridge, Ohio, Windsor College. And so we move over to Ohio, and then in the third movie, we're back in California. And then in the fourth movie, we're back in Woodsboro specifically. And then in the fifth movie, we're back in Woodsboro specifically. And now we're in New York. And this is the most drastically different location that we've ever seen in the Scream franchise, outside of the moments of the gleaming moments of the state of the state of Ohio, where you're at Windsor College, and it really just isn't it. Like it really just feels like kind of like nothing, and you're just like, all right, I guess, like that's not that cool, but whatever. It didn't detract too much, and in all fairness, it was something in the back of my mind that I wasn't thinking about too much when I saw the movie. I stopped and I spoke to the usher that came in to clean afterwards, and they asked me my opinion on the movie, and I asked them theirs, and that was something that they brought up, and it really sat with me because I was so engrossed in everything else, which is why I say this movie is still great, because that was an afterthought that didn't even come to the top of my mind until someone else pointed it out to me. Because you're so engrossed in everything else that is occurring that you just let it go. And I think that that's fantastic. My brain slowed down really quickly and was like, you need water. You've been talking really hard. Obviously, we had some members of the cast return from previous movies. I mean, we had all 4 survivors, the new survivors from Scream 5 come back. And I would like to say that I think all of those actors are really selling it. They're really giving it their all, and that was a lot of fun. Melissa Barrera, Jenna Ortega as the Carpenter sisters, Jasmine Savoy Brown as Mindy Meeks Martin, and Mason Gooding as Chad Meeks Martin. I think they're all fantastic. I don't know, like, Mason Gooding is new, so there's not much else that I have seen that I can pull from and be like, oh yeah, he's a great actor, and just like snatch onto that. But I enjoy his character. I enjoy Chad in this movie. I think he brings a very fun presence. He kind of it's interesting because it kind of makes me think of Dewey without being. I don't want to say as dumb, because Dewey's not dumb. Dewey's never been dumb. He is just. He's too kind for his own good. Jasmine Savoy Brown is the reason I went and watched Letter Jackets alongside a recommendation from a friend, and she's fantastic over there. She's fantastic here. Like, she is killing it. Jenna Ortega obviously has just been blowing up as an actress between X and Wednesday and Scream 5 and 6. Like, she has been cropping up everywhere. She was also in You season 2? I kind of forgot about that. But like, she's just been everywhere. She's just killing it in what she does, and it's fun. Like, it's real good. And Melissa Barrera, I think personally, the only other role I know her for is her being in The Heights as I think she was our lead female character. There's a lot of characters in The Heights. And I'm really blanking because I saw that movie when it came out, and that feels like it was 2 years ago at this point. And as a film student, I see a lot of movies, so they don't all stick in my head, and that's perfectly okay. But the 4 of them together, there's just like a camaraderie, like a family mentality, not to sound like Vin Diesel, that really comes forward that I just thought was a wonderful time. I really enjoyed it. It was really good. Same with our returners from other movies, you know. Gail Weathers, Courtney Cox has come back for the 6th time now, and she's killing it. Her character, her evolution as a character over the course of the 6 movies is really prominent. It's really present. You can really you can really feel for it and her as a person. You really resonate with it. Sorry, I yawned. And then also joining them all was Hayden Panettiere. I'm going to say her last name like that because normally I say it in a joking manner as Hayden Panettiere, because I still don't technically know how to say it, and I feel like I'm saying it wrong, but she returns as Kirby Reed, which isn't a spoiler. It's in the trailers, you see it. But she's back from the 4th movie, and it's real nice to see her back. It's a lot of fun. You know, all of the new faces that are joining the cast too, like, I have to kind of scoot through the casting list. Dermot Mulrooney, Jake Champion, Josh Segarra. Josh Segarra was a nice, fun addition. It took me a while to realize that the reason I knew his face is because I had watched all of She-Hulk, and he was Pug in that show. And I really liked him as Pug. He's a lot of fun, and so getting to have him here was nice too. Liana Liberato, Devin Nakota. We also got some quick cameos from Samara Weaving and Tony Revolori, which Tony Revolori is more recently known for being Flash Thompson of the MCU Spider-Man movies, and Samara Weaving was the lead actress in Ready or Not, so she just kind of got to come back and have some fun with with Radio Silence and the whole lot of them. So that was fun. That was nice getting to see all these actors in here, really flesh out and tell a really intriguing tale. Now, about 15 minutes into this podcast, I'm going to swap over to the more spoiler territory. So if you don't want spoilers, I don't know what to tell you, man. I hope you enjoyed it, because I don't know if I'm going to remember to put down, like, the timestamp where I stopped talking spoilers or something. So yeah, here we go. Now, like, this movie, like every other Scream movie, it's got a killer opening. No pun intended, but that was funny. I didn't mean to make that joke. But it's got a killer opening, and it caught me off guard. Because at this point, I'm really used to the whole, like, okay, we've met our first victim, got to hear them talk on the phone with the killer, they're going to do all their thing. The first victim was Samara Weaving's character, Dr. Crane, or Professor Crane, sorry, because she's a teacher. And we spent some time with her. She immediately, like, she draws you in as a character. You feel for her, but you know, because this is the beginning of the movie, like, oh, she's gonna die. And you just kind of have to accept it, you know? But she, like, you feel for her, like, immediately. She's trying to just go on this date. Eventually, she gets coaxed outside from the restaurant she's sitting into a dark alley, where she is then greeted and killed by Ghostface. He gets to make his signature pun, and he continues on, and then you're just like, where's the title card? Like, where is it? Like, you kind of always get the title card, like, not too long after the first kill. I almost said Drew Barrymore, but that's her name. Casey Becker in the first movie, once her parents find her body and it does the zoom in, we get the title card, Scream. Or we might get it at the beginning. I don't remember. But that is it. Like, it cuts off there because we've seen Ghostface, we've seen the first kill. That's it. Like, we disappear from that. Scream 2, we had our moment with Jada Pinkett Smith and Omar Epps, in the theater, and then once she's gone, title card, Scream 2. Cotton Weary and his wife in the third one. Once they're gone, title card. Like that's just how it goes. Like, I don't remember who it was in the fourth one. I don't remember who sets it. Oh, the fourth one has all the meta deaths, and that's the first time where, like, we see someone die and it doesn't immediately cut to the Scream title card. We get all the Stab title cards until the last one, where it turns out that one is in the Scream universe and not the Stab movies. And then in the fifth one, we get the Jenna Ortega attack, which is the first time we have someone survive the opening attack. And you're like, whoa. And that already subverted its own expectations, and which was really cool. But this one, like, we get through, we see the Ghostface attack, and then it keeps going. And then we see Ghostface, and it's Flash Thompson, it's Tony Revolori. And you're like, whoa, what's going on? And then we follow him as he just goes back to his little apartment or dorm room, I don't know what it is that he shares with his friend Paul. And you're just like, why is it still going? Where's the title card? He passes by Jenna Ortega's character, and you're like, oh, she's here at this school? That's not good. And as he's going through, like, his little apartment, he gets the call. And it's his friend Paul using the Ghostface voice, and you're just like, what is happening? Like, what's going on? And there's a whole, like, hot, like, you're the game, you know, when someone's like, oh, you know, you gotta find this thing, and it's like warmer, oh, you're getting colder, like that type of thing. But instead, he's looking for Paul. And it goes on, and it's a really tense sequence, because you're just like, this guy is Ghostface. We watched him commit a murder. Like, that happened. Who's on the phone with him? Like, who is that Ghostface, right? And so it keeps going until he finds Paul, and it turns out Paul's dead. Paul's been chopped up. He's in the fridge, and he turns around, and he's greeted by another Ghostface who just absolutely wrecks this man's shit. And, like, he's on the ground, and he's like, wait, what about Richie's movie? We've got to finish it. And the Ghostface that's killing him responds with, who gives a fuck about your movie? And slashes, and we cut right to the Scream 6 title card. And I was like, what? Like, that blew me out of the water. I was like, this is new. That was different. That was so cool. I have so many questions. Cause, like, I had an assumption about a character who was, because of that spoiler, I was like, pretty certain that's the killer. And then things happen that, even with knowing that spoiler piece of information, I was like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. maybe that guy just lied, you know? So the movie continues on, like it keeps going, like so we get the title card finally, and I was like, oh, okay. We reconnect with our other characters. We get some story beats. I'm not gonna talk like in depth about like beat to beat to beat because that's a lot, and I didn't take notes, but I do remember a lot of the movie. But I just wanted to specifically highlight that opening for being a new subversive take that I thought was highly fascinating for the movie. That's why it's in this section, because I needed to talk about a lot of it, and like it's spoiler heavy. So, but like the movie continues on, we get a Ghostface that is way different than any of the ones we've seen before. That bodega attack is a big standout. A lot of people online who are fans of the franchise, they had like a weird, I don't know, I don't want to call it an uproar, but they had weird feelings about the idea of Ghostface using a gun. And it's seen in the trailer, in this bodega attack. Ghostface is chasing after Sam and whatever her sister's name is that I just blanked on. Tara? Sam and Tara. And they run into this bodega trying to get help. And like the first dude that like intervenes between like them and Ghostface, like he gets his shit rocked, and so does the second dude. And then the bodega owner pulls out a gun and tries to like stop Ghostface, but then he gets all mickety mocked, and Ghostface gets his shotgun and also ends his life. And you're just like, oh. And everyone was up in arms because they were like, Ghostface doesn't use a gun. No. And it's like, guys, shut up. It's not that Ghostface came in here with a gun. It's that Ghostface came in here and was like, this person has attacked me with a gun. I have overpowered them. Now this gun is mine, and I'm going to use it. Which I think, for being a serial killer in a movie, is an effective choice. Like, that is exactly the way you go about it. And it's not out of the realm of Ghostface, but it's definitely, and it's 100% in the realm of this Ghostface. Which just spoilers out the wazoo for everyone who's listening, although you're in the spoiler section, so what do you care? I have to assume, it's not stated, but I have to assume that this particular attack is being done by Detective Bailey. And that would make sense. He's an older gentleman, he is a cop, he has weapons training way more than literally more than any other Ghostface has ever had. Every other Ghostface that has ever Ghostfaced has only ever used a handgun. And that makes sense, because without going out and like paying to be trained, or like having a field in the middle of nowhere that they can practice using a gun, there's no way they have weapons training. Billy and Stu, they're high schoolers in the 90s. They definitely don't have weapons training. Mickey and Mrs. Loomis, no. they 100% don't. Like, the people of the Scream universe, unless it's their job, have no idea how to handle a weapon. And that's okay. The people that do end up handling weapons, that know how to handle it, Dewey. He's a cop. He's a sheriff. He becomes the, what is he? He becomes the sheriff of Woodsboro, right? Is that what the little tippy top is? Because I can't remember. That makes sense for him to know how to handle weapons. What's her name? Sidney Prescott. Of course she's going to learn how to handle, like, at least a handgun. She's been chased after by a killer for like multiple times over the course of a decade and a half, into 2.5 decades at that rate, pretty much. So of course she's going to know how to handle a weapon, because she needs to know how to defend herself. Like, but those killers, Roman Pierce, there's no world where he knows how to use anything except a handgun. Jill and not Macaulay Culkin, I think it's Rory Culkin in that movie, because Kieran Culkin's the one in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Those are, again, high schoolers. Unless, like, they are coming from a family that knows how to use those weapons, they don't know how to use them. And that's okay. But for this one, with it being Detective Bailey, a gentleman who has adult children, all 3 of his children are adult children, because they were all in either college or college age. Yeah, he's going to know how to use this weapon in this space. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. And I was like, that is an interesting choice, but it makes the most sense for him to be able to do this. I was like, I like that. Obviously, like, they don't catch him in this sequence. He doesn't get Sarah or Tam. Sam or Tara. Just interchangeable names now. We run through our usual suspects list with Mindy. I had to think about it. Their names are weird, and they haven't been living in the zeitgeist of like ideas of horror for as long as everyone else. You know, these characters are characters that got introduced to the world a year ago, just a little over a year ago, whereas the other characters have been living peacefully in the minds of the people since 96. So, you know, into 2006, 2016, that's 20 years. Into 2023, that's another 7. So that's 27 years where they've just been vibing and living with us. So, of course, we're going to remember those names better. But Minnie runs through her suspect list. She talks about Chad's roommate, who is Jack Champion's character, which I've blanked really hard on his name. Ethan. Ethan, they talk about the roommate that... What are their names? Sam and Tara, not Sarah and Tara. That Sam and Tara have Quinn. They talk about Mindy's girlfriend, Annika, because I know how to read names. You know, they bring up all the whole suspect list. The boyfriend, Danny, that's Josh Segarra's character. And it's pretty funny because, like, she's pretty spot on about some of the assumptions that she makes really early on. Because, yeah, I'll get to that in a second. The movie runs through its usual list. I'm not going to go through, like, deaths or things like that. I will say that Annika's death on the ladder was probably the most, like, harrowing one for me. Because I really wanted her to live. I really thought she was going to live, but instead she didn't. She falls to her death. And I was like, darn. I was like, I thought she might make it. A lot of the kills, as I said, they're way more, like, they're up in their graphicness, is how I'm going to word that, and how graphic they are. And that is perfectly fine. Because obviously, after almost 30 years of being a franchise, you have to kind of increase something in some fashion in order for, people to react in a certain way. Like, if it's more of the same, like, here's a single stab or, like, 3 stabs and this person is down, you just kind of go, yeah, okay. But this one makes it feel way more visceral. There's a lot more... There's a lot more upsetting stuff to it. Like, before Annika falls to her death, she is stabbed by Ghostface. And, like, you see the stab, and your brain goes, oh, okay. And then you see the twist, and your whole body just shuts down. Because you're like, nope. And, it's the things like that that really, really sell the fear of this movie, as well as, like, this is Scream. Like, this is the new Scream. And if you don't like it, you might just have to deal with it because because it's definitely here to stay. That's sort of what you get from it. Gonna yawn real quick. But yeah. What happens after that? What else is there? They kill Quinn. They kill the roommate, and she was the daughter of Detective Bailey. So he's real distraught, but he's taken off the case. He promises to help them out. Kirby comes back. You find out she's an FBI agent because she was like, after the last one, I wanted to do everything to make sure I never was in the powerless position, essentially, so that way she can always fight back. And I was like, that makes sense. Gail shows up because Gail lives in New York, as was established in the 5th movie. So, like, that's just where she is. And so, like, we've got the whole gang back together, essentially. And they're plotting, they're planning, they wanna catch Ghostface. They wanna get him. But we go through some other motions. There's obviously a couple more attacks and whatnot. The Gale gets attacked while they're trying to track Ghostface, and they manage to get there in time to save her, not her boyfriend, which I thought was really funny. I was like, this man is here for like all of 10-15 seconds before he is murdered. And Gail gets through pretty smartly, I will say, in her attack. I was pretty proud of her, and I did think for a second maybe they were going to kill her, which would have been an interesting choice without having a Sidney Prescott in this movie, which this is the first movie to not have Sidney. I know there was some behind the scenes stuff with like scheduling and like pay, and like the rate that they were going to pay her was going to be incredibly decreased, which just I personally feel like would have been the wrong move to make. Even though she isn't the main character of this new set of movies, it's still she is the main character of the franchise. no offense to Sam and Tara and the rest of the the woods of the Fab Four or whatever Chad called them, but like this franchise doesn't exist without Sidney Prescott and the trauma and the growth that she gets to make as a character over her time, uh, dealing with a bunch of idiots that like to use the same costume. But Gail gets attacked. She survives though, because Sam and Tara steal a police car, literally, and race to go save her, and they do. And I was like, good on you two, fantastic. So like she's out. There's also a location that is important to the end of the movie, and it is a old theater that was supposedly purchased by Paul and Tony Revolori's character, where they've been keeping like old memorabilia that they've collected from different Ghostface killings and whatnot. And I was just like, this is really cool, because it's essentially the equivalent of just a space filled to the brim with callbacks to the old movies, whether it was like stuff from Randy Meeks, like his uniform from his old job, or they had every single Ghostface costume from like every murderer, which is funny because I never thought about the fact that that every one of them would have had their own costume, and also that every single one of them would have eventually ended up in evidence. And they mention it, they joke, they talk about the fact that there are police officers who just really need money sometimes, and they do the wrong thing, so evidence goes missing. And that sentence is supposed to like really clue you into the fact that, yeah, all of these costumes would have been evidence, only a police officer would have had access to them. Wait a minute, like just like that. And so like that location is very necessary, the old theater, because it comes back later. But I'm gonna just skip right ahead to the sequence that is probably the most talked about. It's the most New York moment, and it's probably the most fear-inducing. Is the Ghostface attack on the train, which I will say that even though that has been prominently featured in the commercials, they have very sneakily, like incredibly sneakily, left out the fact that attack, the way that it occurs. The trailers make it seem like all of the remaining characters, so Sam, Tara, Mindy, Chad, Sam's boyfriend, it makes it seem like they are all on the train, and then Mindy gets attacked. Turns out that Sam, Tara, Sam's boyfriend, and Chad are on one train, and on a separate train are Mindy and Ethan, the roommate to Chad. And they cut back and forth between the two trains because there's like a really intense sequence on the Sam Tara train that makes you think, oh, they're going to get attacked by Ghostface, but you know from the trailer that it's going to be Mindy, and once you realize that she's on a separate train by herself, and she doesn't trust Ethan, so she makes him stand far away, that you're like, oh no, like what is about to happen here? Like she's going to get got, and there's going to be no one that can help her. And I was like, and that was the most tense I had felt in the whole movie, because I've ridden the New York trains once in my life when I was a little younger with my family, and like those moments of just feeling packed like sardines, or like the lights going out, they're horrifying. They're absolutely like in a situation like that, like if my life was on the line like the way Mindy's is, I could never get through that. I would be shaking. I'd be terrified, and she is terrified through that whole sequence, and it really shows. Like Jasmine Savoy Brown is a fantastic actor, but the whole time I was just so tense until she finally does get attacked, and she survives, which I found surprising, but she does. But it just really whew, like that sequence. It just, yeah. The reason they're on the train is because they're heading off to the theater, because they've made it into a quote-unquote kill box to trap the Ghostface. Because as of right now, the way that the attacks have gone, the way that everyone has been like in certain places, you really believe that there is one Ghostface killer, right? Because Ethan and Detective Bailey and everyone else are all like gathered together when they're trying to track Ghostface's location through the phone. So that means like, oh, one person could have been there. And like there is one Ghostface that attacks when they're like in the whatchamacallits, when they're in their own apartment, the one that Sam's boyfriend saves them from, and you are informed that what's the guy's name? Ethan's got an alibi, so he couldn't have been there, and you're just like, oh, okay, all right. So you're really led down this path of believing like there's one Ghostface that is attacking everyone. They've also been leaving like mask at every attack, including the very first one at the beginning, the one with the two dudes that wanted to be the Ghostface killers. And they all contain like DNA from the set of killers from before. So the first mask had the DNA of Richie and Amber from the fifth movie, and then the next attack there was a mask that had the DNA of Jill and I forget the dude's name from the fourth one, and then Roman Bridger, right? Yeah, because Roman Pierce is from Fast and Furious. Roman Bridger from the third one, and then Mrs. Loomis and Mickey from the second one. And it's all counting down to the first one, and they're like, oh, okay, what are they gonna do? Where's this first one gonna crop up, right? And so they're in the kill box. Kirby is there. Sam, Tara, and Chad are there. They get a call from Detective Bailey. He's like, Kirby's lost her mind. She's been let go from the force. Blah 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 blah. So they're trying to set it up to be Kirby. And that the moment they did that, I was like, yeah, it's not Kirby. I was like, there's no world where it's Kirby, and that's okay. But so like they set that up, and you're like, yeah, we'll entertain that for a second. And then Ghostface pops out and attacks Tara and Chad, and like Chad's fending them off real good. Like he's using that brute I am a sportsman strength to save Tara. And right before he can land what might have been a killing blow, because it was one of those old school gumball machines, and he had it sideways, but I know for a fact if you take that metal base and just go ham on someone's head, it would take them out. But before he can do that, another Ghostface pops up and stabs him in the side. So this is the moment the movie confirms that there are two Ghostface. And so both of those Ghostface just go ham on Chad. And you're just like, oh my god. Like, it was violent. It's terrible. Like, he's holding in his last, like, essentially, like, holding all of his willpower to just tell Tara to run. Like, Jenna Ortega's character. And you're just like, oh my god. And probably one of the... If it was any other movie, would have just been funny. But in this moment, after they had just attacked Chad and like taking him out of the picture, you just like the two Ghostface stand up and they both clean the blood from their blade in the same way at the exact same time, and you're just like like I gasped. I was like, oh my god, like that's insane. And so then, a little cat and mouse occurs. Kirby comes out, the two Ghostface run off because she has a gun. Then Detective Bailey appears, and there's a whole thing. Kirby's like, I was attacked, like blah 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 blah. And one of the Ghostface runs up on Detective Bailey, so Kirby goes to like shoot at them, and Detective Bailey pretends to like turn around, and instead he shoots Kirby, and the Ghostface doesn't attack him, and you're like, oh. And then the other Ghostface comes and flanks him, and you're like, oh. And for the first time in the history of Scream, there are 3 killers instead of 2 or 1. Because Roman is living in his own world as being the only one where it was just one person. But everyone else has had a partner. There's always been 2. Now we've upped it to 3. And you're like, oh my god. And then like they reveal themselves. One of them is Ethan. And you're like, oh. Okay. I wasn't expecting that, because a lot of the attacks that you've seen, like, he's been there for as Ethan, not as Ghostface. Or he's had an alibi. And so you're just like, okay, well, if Ethan's one of them and Detective Bailey is one, that still doesn't account for who attacked Gail Weathers. I was like, who was that person? And they take off the mask and it's revealed that it's Quinn, Detective Bailey's daughter. And you're just like, huh? You're like, now wait a second, but she died earlier, right? Turns out Detective Bailey swapped her, like, they faked her death and then they swapped her body out with, like, a cadaver, like, he says a fresh body, which implies that he killed someone else in his daughter's place, which I think is hilarious. And I was just like, oh, snap. They all think it's Mindy before she takes the mask off, because to Tara and Sam, like, Mindy is not present because they don't know she's been attacked. And so I was just like, oh, shit. right? And all throughout the movie, whenever the Ghostface calls, they talk about how like she needs to be punished. They're trying to punish Sam for what she did, like, and you're just like, well, okay, why? And one of the clues they gave really early on is that Quinn talks about the fact that her father has not like left her side. He's been like a hawk. He even moved to New York when she got into the college because her brother was killed the year before. And so he's been really protective since she's like the last kid he has. And you're just like, your brother, huh? I wonder. And I was very curious because I was like, I wonder who it's gonna be. Because I was like, there's multiple routes they could go with this. It was like either her brother was one of the victims of the previous massacre that occurred in Woodsboro thanks to Richie and Amber, or her brother was Richie. And then when she died, I kind of ruled that out of my head. And then when we get this reveal, and you find out that Ethan has been lying, his last name is not like Landry or whatever he's been saying, it is Bailey. He is also the son of Detective Bailey. You just kind of go, oh, wait, then. And then it turns out that, yes, he does have a dead son, and those two do have a dead brother who they all loved and cherished very much. And it is Richie. You find out that this is Richie's family, and you're just like, oh, okay. And they're just really adamant about like getting her because of how she brutalized Richie. Like when Sam killed Richie, she stabbed him like 21 times, stabbed him through his like jaw, and then like slit his throat. Like she eviscerated that man. He had no chance. The way that everyone's like, oh, Stu still has a chance to be alive. Richie, no, done for. He is gonzo. It was insane. So we finally get all of that. You find out that everything that's in the theater was bought by Detective Bailey. He did it for Richie, because Richie was a big adamant fan. You find out there's a bunch of drawings in every single case, and it turns out that those drawings were done by Richie. They play like short films start playing in this sequence, and you find out that those were also made by Richie. Like he was an avid filmmaker when he was younger, and he was technically a filmmaker later on too, as stated by the whole like we got to finish Richie's film thing. And I was just like, this isn't crazy. This is insane. And then like, Kirby, does Kirby pop back up? Kirby pops back up. There's a whole like split up chase around that occurs. It's Sam versus Quinn and Tara versus what's his name? Ethan. Which led to some really cool moments because they were trying to sneak away, and Tara falls, and Sam's trying to hold on to her. She can't lift her up because her arm was cut, so it was covered in blood, so she was slipping. And she has a knife on her hip, and because she had originally had used it, I don't know who she had used it on at that point, but she took it to defend herself, right? And there was a gun up on the side, and I can't remember whose it was. I think it was Kirby's, and they took it. It was either Kirby's or it was Detective Bailey's. No, because Detective Bailey still has his gun after his encounter. But so, like, Tara's like, you've got to let me go. And there's been a whole thing through the movie where Sam has been just overly protective and, like, is trying to get Tara to talk about what has occurred. And she just won't. She's like, I'm going to live a normal life. And, like, I don't want to deal with this anymore, blah, blah, blah. And so she finally lets her go. And it's the first time, like, through the whole movie where she's, like, she lets her go. But she gives her knife. So she goes down, Ethan stabs her in, like, the stomach, but she stabs Ethan through the mouth. Not, like, through, like, the cheek to cheek, like Richie got, but, like, from the front opening out the back. And I was like, ugh! Like, my whole soul was like, no! And then Sam grabs the gun and points it at Quinn. And Quinn stops in her tracks and tries to, like, back up because it's a gun and you have a knife and you didn't close the distance to secure the win. So, like, you're going to get messed up. And she gets headshotted cleanly. And as she drops like a sack of potatoes, the shot reveals that her father is right behind her. So Detective Bailey's just there watching his children die, essentially. And he gets into his tussle with Sam. Fast forward, they fall off this second story spot. He lands on a like a case. She just lands. So he's knocked out for a little bit. And that gives Sam enough time to do some shenanigans, like find her father's costume, which is the last one because, she's the daughter of Billy Loomis. And so she pops into that, Detective Bailey tries to find her. Like, they have the whole like call where now she is the Ghostface to him. And I was like, we're doing this again, and we've done it so many times with Sydney Prescott. Whenever she can get the drop on certain people, like she did it to Billy and Stu, she did it to Roman. She didn't get to do it to anyone in the fourth movie, and I think someone else got to do it in the fifth movie, but I can't remember. I don't remember if Tara got to do that or not. But so like he goes in, he's trying to like find her. But before he can, she pops out and goes full Ghostface regalia and absolutely hammers it home. Like, up one arm, across the back, down the other arm. She just eviscerates this man, but she doesn't kill him. And she makes a point of that. She's like, I'm not going to be what you think I am. Like, I'm not going to murder you, blah, 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 blah. And, like, Tara shows up, and, like, Tara, like, looks at her and then looks at him, and she kind of gives this nod of, like, you gotta. And she's like, but you messed with my family. And just through the eye. And I jumped, and the older woman with her husband in front of me jumped. And I think a couple of the teens over on the side jumped because I wasn't expecting this knife to just slam right through this dude's eye into his brain and just have him death twitch on the ground. And I was just like, what? I was like, these kills are so violent. I was like, it's insane. I had to tell Kingsley, who, makes all the graphics, including the one you see on this here, what's this called? A podcast. I was like, yeah, you might need to go see this with someone, because I know you wouldn't be able to handle some of the graphicness of these kills on your own. I was like, just being honest. And I was like, that's insane. But they came out successful. On the end, all the killers died. Kirby and Gale got to live, which was nice because, in 5 they brought back that Deputy Hops? Hops? Yeah. I can't remember if that's her name, but she's the sheriff of Woodsboro by the time we get to the 5th movie, and then she dies, and so does her son Wes. And it's like, oh, are we just gonna bring Kirby back to kill her too, since we don't have a Sydney Prescott? But I think they're bringing Kirby back in order to sort of be like the Sydney of the franchise going forward, in case they don't ever get Neve Campbell back. But we wrap it all up. We find out Chad didn't die. Gale and Mindy are gonna pull through. Sam and Tara are gonna kind of get through their everything, but they kind of leave us with this kind of inkling of an idea that they've been hinting at throughout the movie, including the first time we see Sam again, where she's at a therapist appointment, talking about how, like, the reason she's in therapy, because she hasn't opened up to this therapist, she finally decides to, and she tells him everything that occurred the year before, and whatnot, and how she killed Richie, and that the reason she's here is not because she's upset about what she had to do or what happened to her, but the fact that she enjoyed what she did, and that scares her. And, like, we see it we see it brought up a couple of times, especially when they're talking about how, like, she needs to be punished, blah, 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 blah. But especially in the ending, because you see, like, the sort of smile creep across her face when she kills Quinn. And then, like, obviously the way she goes at Detective Bailey is kind of crazy. But the movie kind of leaves us with this idea because she opens up her jacket. And inside is Billy Loomis's mask. And it's falling apart. It's old. It's the one Detective Bailey was using whenever he was out as Ghostface. And you're left with this idea of, like, is Sam gonna, like, succumb? Like, is she going to become a serial killer like her father? And, like, you don't get the answer to that. She drops the mask. She lets it go. So you have to assume, okay, maybe she's leaving this behind. Maybe no more ghost Billy Loomis. But, like, that's where the movie ends. And I was like, the sequences, like, all of these sequences, like, these cat and mouse moments throughout the movie, they were incredibly tense. I loved every single one of them. I loved every Ghostface attack. I loved that every character wasn't nearly as dumb as, like, horror movie characters are, which makes sense. It's Scream. Like, they were way more aware of what's going on, and that's always really good. It's really good to have, especially in a franchise like this. And I really had a fun time, and I really wanted to talk about it, and there's this part of me that wishes that I could talk more in depth about movies here on the podcast, and I could, but I don't think people want to hear that. If they did, let me know. Let me know down below. But like these more abridged ones, even this one, this is a longer podcast episode. Since we've been cutting it down to 30 minutes, and now this one is closer to an hour. It's closer to an old podcast, but that's because I was talking really in depth. I mentioned a lot of sequences, and even then, I didn't talk about everything. Like, I didn't talk about the therapist getting killed by Ghostface. I didn't talk about, I didn't talk about, Ethan's actual death, because he doesn't die due to the terror attack. He's just down for the count for a little bit, like they have to have in every movie. There's a lot of things I didn't mention, but the ones I did were the ones I really wanted to talk about, because they really stood out to me as a showcase for how Scream is changing. And I really think they should leave it off with this, because even though I'm sure there's going to be plenty of copycats that want to complete quote-unquote Richie's film, I think the idea of his family trying to come and get their revenge, and also getting rid of the two ghost faces that wanted to complete Richie's film because they didn't want them to kill Sam or Tara before they could, I think that's a nice just bow. You really could just wrap it up right there. I would take it. I would accept no more Screams for I don't know, let's say a decade, and that would be fine. I also thought it was funny that a lot of what occurred in this movie kind of reminded me of the second one a lot, which I rewatched it recently. But I realized we've got the college setting, even though we're not in the college the way we are in the second one. We're at college. Sam is dealing with a lot of trauma the way that Sydney was dealing with a lot of trauma. We have a new boyfriend who we don't trust that much, because we're the last boyfriend was a killer the same way it was for Sydney in the first movie. And it's just there's a lot of beats and moments that are repeated, but are done in such a way that you're just yeah, this is good. I like this, But yeah, so that's where I'm going to leave that off, because there's a lot of things I have to get through today. So thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. If you liked it, make sure to check out everything else I do using the Linktree link down below. You'll find the other YouTube channel as well as my Twitch, alongside the social medias that I'm on, which would be Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Yeah, that's all I've got for you guys today. So come back next week for What a Book. I almost said What a Thought again. Where we'll continue on with some more chapters of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. But until then, I've been Matthew Allen. This has been What a Thought, and I will see all of you next week.